Is it recording? Oh, yes, it is. Hello. Good evening. I am quite tired. It's been a long day. I've went to a different office today as well. And I am tired. I've probably had too much sugar today. And I've had a hot chocolate for the first time in months. Although I think I should probably make it like cocoa. Like a cocoa drink rather than a normal instant hot chocolate. Right. Let's get reading because today is day 127 of reading the Bible in a year. And it is the first reading of 4 readings today. And I am starting with 1 Kings chapter 7. Solomon's other buildings. But Solomon took 13 years to build his own house, so he finished all his house. He also built the house of the forest of Lebanon. Its length was 100 cubits, its width 50 cubits, and its height 30 cubits, with 4 rows of cedar pillars, cedar beams on the pillars. And it was panelled with cedar above the beams that were on 45 pillars, 15 to a row. There were windows with beveled frames in 3 rows, and window was opposite window in 3 tiers. And all the doorways and doorposts had rectangular frames, and window was opposite window in 3 tiers. He also made the hall of pillars. Its length was 50 cubits, its width 30 cubits, and in front of them was a portico with pillars, and a canopy was in front of them. Then he made a hall for the throne, the hall of judgment, where he might judge, and it was panelled with cedar from floor to ceiling. And the house where he dwelt had another court inside the hall, like workmanship. Solomon also made a house like this hall for Pharaoh's daughter, whom he had taken as wife. All these things were of costly stones cut to size, trimmed with saws inside and out, from the foundation to the eaves, and also on the outside of the great court. The foundation was of costly stones, large stones, some 10 cubits and some 8 cubits. Wow. And above them were costly stones, hewn to size in cedar wood. The great court was enclosed with 3 rows of hewn stones and a row of cedar beams. So were the inner court of the house of the Lord and the vestibule of the temple. Hiram the craftsman. Now King Solomon sent and brought Hiram, also called Hiram, from Tyre. He was the son of a widow from the tribe of Naphtali, and his father was a man of Tyre, a bronze worker. He was filled with wisdom and understanding and skill in working with all kinds of bronze work. So he came to Solomon and did all his work. The bronze pillars from the temple. And he cast 2 pillars of bronze, each one 18 cubits high. Wow. And a line of 12 cubits measured in circumference from each. Then he made 2 capitals of cast bronze to set upon the tops of the pillars. The height of one capital was 5 cubits. That's 23 cubits in total. And the height of the other capital was 5 cubits. He made a lattice work with wreaths of chainwork for the capitals, which were on top of the pillars, 7 chains for one capital and 7 for the other. So he made the pillars 2 rows of pomegranates above the network all around to cover the capitals that were on top. And thus he did for the other capital. The capitals which were on top of the pillars in the hall were the shape of lilies, 4 cubits. The capitals on the 2 pillars had also pomegranates above, and the convex surface which was next to the network, and there were 200 such pomegranates and rows on each of the capitals all around. Then he set up the pillars by the vestibule of the temple, and he set up the pillar on the right and called its name Jachin, and he called the pillar on the left named Boaz. The tops of the pillars were the shape of lilies, so the work of the pillars were finished, the sea and the oxen. And he made the sea of cast bronze, 10 cubits from one brim to the other. It was completely round. Its height was 5 cubits. A line of 30 cubits measured to its circumference. Below its brim were ornamental buds encircling it all around, 10 to a cubit, all the way around the sea. And the ornamental buds were cast into 2 rows. When it was cast, it stood on the 12 oxen, 3 looking toward the north, 3 looking west, 3 looking south, 3 looking east. And the sea was set upon them, and all their back parts pointed inward. It was a handbreadth thick, and its brim was shaped like the brim of a cup, like a lily blossom. It also contained thousands of baths. The carts and the lavers. He also made 10 carts of bronze. 4 cubits was the length of each cart, 4 cubits its width, and 3 cubits its height. And this was the design of the carts. They had panels, and the panels were between frames. On the panels that were between the frames were lions, oxen, and cherubim. And on the frames was a pedestal on top. Below the lions and the oxen were wreaths of plated work. Every cart had 4 bronze wheels and axles of bronze, and its 4 feet had supports. Under the laver were supports of cast bronze beside each wreath, and its opening inside the crown at the top was 1 cubit in diameter, and the opening was round, shaped like a pedestal, 1.5 cubits in 1.5 cubits in outside diameter, and also on the opening were engravings. Other panels were square, not round. Did you hear that? Square, not round. Under the panels were 4 wheels, and the axles of the wheels were joined to the cart. The height of a wheel was 1.5 cubits. The workmanship of the wheels was like the workmanship of a chariot wheel. Their axle pins, their rims, their spokes, and their hubs were all of cast bronze. And there were 4 supports at the 4 corners of each cart. Its supports were part of the cart itself. On the top of the cart, at the height of the cubit, it was perfectly round, and on the top of the cart, its flanges and its panels were of the same casting. On the plates of its flanges, so that's where Phoebe gets phalange from. On the plates of its flanges and on the panels He engraved cherubim, lions, and palm trees wherever there was a clear space on each, with wreaths all around. Thus he made 10 carts. All of them were of the same mould, one measure and one shape. Then he made 10 lavers of bronze. Each laver contained 40 baths. How big were these? Enough to contain 40 baths. And each laver was 4 cubits. One each of the 10 carts was a laver. A little bit left. Come on. And he put 5 carts on the right side of the house and on 5 on the left. He set the sea on the right hand side of the house and toward the southeast. Furnishings at the temple. Hiram made the lavers and the shovels and the bowls. So Hiram finished doing all the work that he was to do for King Solomon for the house of the Lord. 2 pillars and 2 bowl-shaped capitals that were on top of 2 pillars and the 2 networks covering the 2 bowl-shaped capitals, which were on top of the pillars. 400 pomegranates and of the 2 networks, 2 rows of pomegranates for each network to cover the 2 bowl-shaped capitals that were on top of the pillars. 10 carts and 10 lavers on the carts. 1 sea, 1 oxen under the sea. The pot, the shovels, and the bowls. All these articles which Hiram made for King Solomon for the house of the Lord were burnished bronze. In the plain of the Jordan, the king had them cast the moulds between Succoth and Zeratan. And Solomon did not weigh in the articles because there were so many. The weight of the bronze was not determined. Thus Solomon had all the furnishings made for the house of the Lord, the altar of gold, the table, and the gold of... My eyes are closing. Thus Solomon had all the furnishings made for the house of the Lord, the altar of gold, the table of gold on which was showbread, lampstands of pure gold, 5 on each right side and 5 on the left of the inner sanctuary, with the flowers and the lamps and the wicker trimmings of gold, the basins, the trimmers, the bowls, the ladles, and the censers of pure gold, and the hinges of gold, both for the doors and the inner room of the most high place, and for the doors of the main hall of the temple. So all the work that King Solomon had done for the house of the Lord was finished, and Solomon brought in the things which his father David had declared, the silver and the gold and the furnishings. He put them in the treasures of the house of the Lord. Right, that was a long read. And I bet you couldn't see my right eye closing because my hair's in the way of my right eye. But my left eye is almost closed as well. Alright, I will try and finish all the readings before I finish for today. And I will see you in the next reading, where I'm pretty much going to be reading the same stuff as well. Yay!